You think you're doing fine. Bills are paid. You're not making reckless decisions. There's even a savings account somewhere with your name on it. But every single month ends the same exact way. The number in your account barely shifts. The things you want most stay frustratingly out of reach. You watch people around you taking trips, signing mortgages, casually dropping words like portfolio and dividends, and something inside you wonders, what do they know that I don't? Here's the real answer. It's not that you're bad with money. It's not simply that you don't earn enough, though that may also play a role. The truth is that you've built a collection of habits that feel completely ordinary. Habits shared by millions. Habits that never set off any alarm because they don't look like mistakes. They look like normal. They look like what responsible adults do. And that's precisely why they're so effective at quietly destroying your financial future without you ever seeing it happen. These aren't dramatic, obvious errors. Nobody's going to tap you on the shoulder and warn you. These habits don't hurt in the moment. They feel sensible, even smart. That's what makes them dangerous. That's what makes them worth examining carefully. What follows are 11 money habits that are keeping you exactly where you don't want to be. Some of these are going to feel personal. You might see yourself in one, or three, or maybe most of them. That discomfort you feel, that's not a bad sign. That's the whole point. Because the moment you can see a pattern clearly, you have the power to break it. Let's begin. The first habit is paying yourself last. Picture the typical paycheck routine. Money lands in the account. Immediately, it starts disappearing. Rent goes, utilities go, the car note, the phone plan, the streaming services, the minimum credit card payments, all of it clears out automatically. Then comes the social layer, dinner with friends, the event everyone's attending, the thing you can't skip because everyone's going. And then, theoretically, whatever remains at the very bottom of that pile gets saved, except nothing's ever at the bottom. There's always one more thing. Always a reason why this particular month isn't the right one to finally get serious about saving. This is what it means to pay yourself last, treating your own financial future like it gets funded with leftovers. The issue here isn't discipline or self-control. The issue is sequence. By the time you've satisfied every bill, every obligation, and every social expectation, the person who actually did the work to earn that money gets nothing. People who build wealth reverse this completely. The instant income arrives, a portion moves directly into savings or investments before they even have a chance to think about it, before lifestyle takes its cut, before anything else. This isn't about having iron willpower. It's about designing a system that works without requiring willpower at all. When you save first, your spending naturally adapts to what remains. When you save last, your spending expands to consume everything and saving gets nothing. Automate a minimum of 10% straight to a separate account the moment your paycheck hits. Don't watch it. Don't treat it as accessible. Pay yourself first, and you guarantee yourself a future. Pay yourself last, and you guarantee yourself nothing. The second habit is spending money in order to save it. You picked up those shoes because they were 40% off. You bought 3 of something you only needed 1 of because the math on the bundle deal seemed too good to ignore. You checked out during a sale event for items that weren't even on your mind before the notification arrived. This is spending to save, one of the most brilliantly engineered psychological traps in modern consumer culture. The logic seems completely solid. If something normally goes for $100 and you get it for $60, you saved $40. That's what it feels like. But that's not what happened. You spent $60. The $40 you saved was never in your hands. It was a number displayed on a screen, engineered specifically to trigger a feeling of victory. You cannot deposit the money you saved on a purchase into any account. The only dollars that actually count are the ones you kept entirely. You save 100% of the money you choose not to spend at all. Sales are not gifts. They are tools designed to compress your decision-making window. They create urgency. They manufacture a fear that waiting will cost you something. They turn browsing into buying. And they work best on people who believe they're being clever by chasing deals. Whether it's a major retail event, a flash sale, or a limited time offer, the underlying mechanism is always the same. Make you feel like inaction is the expensive choice. If you weren't already planning to buy something before the discount appeared, if you wouldn't have paid full price for it, then the sale price isn't a bargain. It's just a smaller version of money you didn't need to spend. The best deal available is the one you walk away from entirely. The third habit is not tracking where your money actually goes. Ask someone what they spend on food each month, and they'll estimate. Ask about subscriptions, and they'll hesitate. Ask for a complete breakdown of their expenses, and the conversation tends to shift quickly. This is financial blindness. You cannot direct something you're not measuring. And when you stop measuring your spending takes over completely. The discomfort of actually tracking is real and significant. Seeing every number written out in concrete form removes every comfortable excuse. You can't look away from $200 in delivery app charges when it's documented clearly in front of you. You can't pretend the subscription pile isn't quietly growing when you total it up and realize you're paying nearly $100 monthly for things you rarely even open. You can't maintain the illusion that your estimated spending matches your actual spending, because it almost never does. That discomfort is not a side effect, it's the entire benefit. Most people don't track because they don't want the accountability that comes with knowing. Knowing forces decisions. Knowing removes the comfortable fog that allows harmful patterns to run unchallenged. It's far easier to stay vague than to face what's actually happening. But until you know with precision what comes in and what goes out every single month, you are not making decisions about your money. You're reacting. You're surprised every 30 days instead of being in control from day one. Track everything without exception for one full month. Every small purchase, every automatic renewal, every rounded up tip, every "it's only a few bucks" moment you'd normally dismiss. What you discover will be uncomfortable, and it will show you exactly where your money has been quietly vanishing. The fourth habit is lifestyle creep. The raise finally came through. More money, every pay period, and you earned it. So the apartment gets an upgrade. The car gets nicer. Restaurants become a regular thing instead of a treat. The vacation budget expands. The wardrobe improves. After all, you can afford it now. 6 months later, something unsettling becomes undeniable. You're earning more than you ever have and feeling just as financially pressured as before. The bank balance looks identical. The stress hasn't decreased. The goals feel just as distant. The only real difference is that your monthly baseline has quietly risen to absorb everything the raise was supposed to provide. This is lifestyle creep. Income goes up, and spending automatically rises to match it. Yesterday's luxury becomes today's baseline. The nicer apartment stops feeling like an upgrade and simply becomes home. The restaurants stop feeling special and become routine. And once you've inflated your lifestyle, pulling it back feels like retreat, like admitting failure, so you stay locked at a higher spending floor, running harder just to stay in the same place. Every income increase is an opportunity to actually change your financial trajectory. Most people spend that opportunity instead. The raise gets absorbed by upgraded consumption, and the opportunity disappears completely. Lifestyle improvements aren't inherently wrong, but they should happen deliberately, after your financial foundation is genuinely secured, not automatically the moment more income arrives. The fifth habit is using credit cards as a crutch. Swipe now, sort it out when the bill comes. By then, another paycheck will have landed. It'll balance out. Except it keeps not balancing out. The balance rolls forward. Interest stacks on top of interest. The debt grows slowly enough that panic never sets in, but steadily enough that escape never quite happens either. Some months you nearly clear it, and then something comes up, and you're back at the beginning. When you carry a balance and only make minimum payments, you're not paying down debt. You're paying a monthly fee for the privilege of continuing to owe money. Credit cards, used well, offer real advantages, convenience, fraud protection, and sometimes worthwhile rewards. But they become financially destructive the moment they function as a way to spend money you don't have while telling yourself you'll have it later. There's a psychological dimension here that goes beyond the numbers. Credit cards sever the emotional connection between spending and paying. You get the item now. The discomfort arrives weeks later, buried in a statement full of transactions you can barely place. Each individual swipe feels painless, nearly invisible. That broken feedback loop is the whole danger. One rule resolves it. If you cannot pay for something in full today, you cannot afford it today. Use the card for convenience, not to extend a budget beyond what actually exists. The sixth habit is vying for your fantasy self. The closet is full of things worn once or never. The workout equipment collects dust. The books remain unopened. The hobby supplies sit exactly where they were placed after the first excited unboxing. This is money spent on the person you imagined becoming, not the person you currently are. The fantasy version of you runs regularly, so you bought the gear. The fantasy version cooks impressive meals, so you bought the equipment. The fantasy version is disciplined and cultured and productive, so you purchased everything that person would own. These purchases feel like investments in a better future self. They feel aspirational and forward-thinking, but the better self never quite arrives, and you're left with expensive evidence of good intentions that went nowhere. Before buying anything for the version of yourself you want to become, ask one direct question. What have you done recently and consistently that proves you're actually becoming that person? If the honest answer is nothing, the purchase is probably a substitute for action, not a step toward it. The 7th habit is saying yes to every social spending opportunity. The invitation arrives. You're trying to be careful with money, but you don't want to be the one who never shows up. So you say yes, and then yes again to the weekend trip, the concert, the birthday dinner at the expensive place, the drinks afterward, the group gift nobody budgeted for. Every individual yes feels harmless, small, social, but every yes to unplanned spending is a direct no to something you actually care about building. Peer pressure doesn't disappear after school. It just gets a bigger price tag. Learning to say no, to suggest something different, to decline without lengthy explanation, is a genuine financial skill. The discomfort of that conversation is temporary. The debt you avoid is not. The 8th habit is waiting for more money before starting. You'll get serious about budgeting once income improves. You'll invest when you have real money to work with. You'll sort everything out when circumstances are better. But the perfect moment never materializes. There's always a legitimate sounding reason to wait another month, another year. And while you're waiting, the skills that actually matter, budgeting, tracking, prioritizing, saying no, thinking long-term, never get built. Those skills don't appear automatically when a larger paycheck arrives. People who lack financial habits at lower incomes simply repeat those same habits at higher incomes, just with bigger numbers and more expensive consequences. Start now with whatever you have. The amount is not the point. The practice is. The 9th habit is dismissing small expenses as too minor to matter. $5 here, $8 there, a forgotten app subscription, a convenience fee you didn't question, rounding up at checkout because declining felt uncomfortable. Each transaction is small enough to seem irrelevant, but small expenses compound exactly the way investments do, just in reverse. $5 per day is over $1,800 per year. Subscriptions you forgot exist can total hundreds annually. The problem isn't the coffee. The problem is the invisibility. When small amounts escape scrutiny because they feel trivial, they multiply without any accountability. Know what you're spending. Make it a conscious choice. The goal isn't restriction, it's awareness. The 10th habit is treating investing as something to handle later, when you know more, when the timing improves, when everything else is sorted. Meanwhile, time moves forward. Compound interest, the single most powerful wealth-building mechanism, available to ordinary people, works for everyone except those who keep waiting. Someone who invests $200 monthly, beginning at 25, will accumulate roughly $600,000 by 65. Someone who begins the same practice 10 years later ends up with less than half that. The delay doesn't just slow growth, it cuts the outcome dramatically, because early money has decades of compounding behind it, and late money barely has time to start. You don't need to be an expert. A basic index fund requires no specialized knowledge and has delivered consistent returns historically. Open the account, set up automatic transfers, let time work. The longer you wait, the harder everything becomes later. The 11th habit, and the one that quietly causes all the others, is refusing to invest in financial knowledge. You'll spend freely on experiences, items, and pleasures that fade quickly, but spending time or money on genuinely understanding how personal finance works feels optional, something to revisit eventually. This is the most expensive habit on the entire list. Financial illiteracy carries a direct measurable cost every single year, not counting the indirect losses, the investment returns never earned, the debt years that could have been avoided, the retirement that never becomes possible because the math was never understood. Every other habit on this list exists because of this one. The patterns that keep people financially stuck aren't random. They're predictable. They follow the same logic. They exploit the same gaps in understanding. And they continue, without exception, until knowledge interrupts them. The information exists. It's accessible. It just has to be treated as a genuine priority, not as something you'll get around to eventually. Here's what connects all of this. Nobody sat you down and explained how money actually works, so you defaulted to what felt normal, what you observed growing up, what everyone around you was doing, what seemed reasonable given no better information. But normal isn't neutral. Normal is expensive. Every year spent operating on financial default rather than financial understanding is a year of falling further behind the trajectory you're capable of reaching. The habits that brought you to this point will not carry you where you want to go. Something has to interrupt them, and that interruption begins with knowing what to look for, which you now do. The only remaining question is what you choose to do with that.